Well, good middle of the nightmare to you. It's the 19th of November 2019. I'm your host, Alexander T. Newport, and you've reached the Al Newport Show, also known as Philosopher Newport. So yeah, man, what if we went to sleep and never woke up? It's one of those ironic things, isn't it? Alan Watts asking the question, what would happen if you went to sleep and never woke up? And that happens to be the way he died. He went to sleep and he never fucking woke up. Had some sort of heart failure in his sleep. Age 58, almost 59. But it's sort of ironic, like the mushroom expert dying from eating a poison mushroom. But sleep, I mean, I've written about sleep in various books, but always I've written about the benefits of sleep. I've never attempted to explain what sleep is. I mean, imagine if you met a human being who has never slept. How would you explain what sleep is? It's almost like trying to explain to somebody what it's like to be high on marijuana. It's just fucking impossible. I remember it took 10 months for my curiosity to grow into a strong, keen desire to try marijuana. And in that 10 months, I would talk to stoners and I would ask them to explain to me what the high was like. And they couldn't do it. And I thought, I wonder if it's like, you know, when you get on one of those merry-go-rounds at a playground and you spin around and around, or if you just stand in place, so to speak, and you spin around. Is it like being dizzy? Is it like the feeling you get when you're on a roller coaster and it starts to drop down the steep decline? That almost orgasmic feeling you sort of feel in your solar plexus? Is it like being drunk? Is it like being sleepy? What's it like? And you just can't fucking explain it. And so it's the same deal with sleep. Think about it. How would you explain what's actually going on? What are you actually doing when you go to sleep? So I've been looking at it. I've been examining it for a long time. And the best words I can come up with are, when I lay down to go to sleep, I close my eyes. Sometimes I sigh. Like my dogs. I notice my dogs, when they're ready to drop off to sleep, they let out a big sigh. And then they're off. So I sometimes do that. I close my eyes. I know that in order to fall asleep, I can't be thinking about things. Whether it's a worry or a conversation I intend to have with someone, or working out some kind of problem or whatever. I know I can't be doing that. So I lay down, I close my eyes, and I intentionally don't engage in any kind of thinking about things, so to speak. And I generally go to a couple of fantasies. Sometimes I imagine myself laying next to a stream. You know, and it's a very shallow stream, but it's a nice sound, and I'm in the middle of nowhere in a green field. You know, no houses, no buildings, no people, no bugs, no nothing. It's just, you know, it's a beautiful day, and I just lay down next to the stream. Sometimes, especially if it's like summertime, I imagine I'm laying in the stream, and the stream's just sort of rolling around me and over me. But it's shallow, so I'm not drowning. There's no threat of drowning. Sometimes I imagine running and diving off a cliff. Sometimes I imagine laying on the edge of a very high cliff and just rolling off. Sometimes I imagine walking in the middle of a familiar crosswalk where there's lots of traffic, and I stand in the middle of it, and I put a gun to my head and I blow my brains out. I know those are morbid, but somehow I get relief from imagining that I'm committing suicide. And it only takes a little while. I don't know, hardly a minute or a few minutes. And what happens? I begin, those fantasies sort of segue into sort of chatter, but it's a meaningless, insubstantial kind of chatter that goes on, and next thing I know, I dissolve and I disappear. So oftentimes at night I roll over in bed, and when I roll over, I sometimes glance at the clock. And so let's say it's 1:15 in the morning when I glance at the clock, and then I fall back asleep, and notice that word fall. And then the next time I wake up and I haven't been dreaming, and it's like 3:30, and it's like, where have I been? Where have I disappeared to? I mean, it seems somehow logically and reasonably that somehow eternal consciousness cannot actually ever be totally unconscious, where it doesn't exist anymore, seemingly. I mean, because think about it. You go to sleep, and I'm talking about the sleep that doesn't involve any dreaming. You know, it's like you've disappeared. You, as a conscious awareness, where have you disappeared for the past 2 hours? You have no memory, you have no recollection of being conscious of anything for the past 2 hours that you've been asleep. Well, how can eternal consciousness, how can it just disappear? How can it just dissolve into nothingness and cease to exist, even for a little bit of time? And so what occurred to me was this idea. It's just an idea. There's no fucking way anyone could ever prove it. But there's this idea that when we fall asleep, when we seemingly dissolve and disappear and into no conscious awareness of anything at all, what if when we fall asleep and we dissolve and disappear, we actually, as eternal consciousness, wake up in our home state of awareness for a little while? We wake up in reality heaven for a little while. That's our home state of spiritual sanity and sobriety. What if we wake up there for a little while and then somehow snap back into this dream world again? And the reason why we don't have any memory of it is because the memory here as human beings is the human memory. So the human memory bank cannot record us as eternal consciousness temporarily returning to an awakening in reality heaven. You understand? This entire physical human world that we're living is obviously an intentional escape and forgetting of reality heaven. Remember, I'm a philobabblist extraordinaire. I'm a philobabblist. We philobabblists are very few and far between in this dream world, for obvious reasons. The dream was designed to forget reality. No doubt about it. And so therefore, the majority of the people here, the majority of the humans here, they're not even going to question that this is a dream. They designed it so that it'd be complete absorption, complete immersion, and that this is the only conscious existence they've ever had and ever will have. I'm amazed at people who make their peace with the idea of a nihilistic existence and death. You know, Kurt Vonnegut was one of those. Kurt Vonnegut, as it turns out, was quite naive, a very naive man. He still remains my #1 favorite novelist and always will be, I'm sure. But his politics and his ideas about religion and philosophy or cosmology, or the fundamental questions are very naive, his ideas. But anyways, so as eternal consciousness, we design this physical human world to completely forget about our reality. The reality heaven, our home state of awareness of spiritual sanity and sobriety, it never changes. That's why this is a wonderful experience, this physical world of perpetual change. So, when we dissolve and disappear in something that we call sleep, what if we are actually waking up as eternal consciousness in our home state of awareness, and for what, I don't know why, but when we wake up again as a human being, we have no memory of that because this human memory thing, it's already packed. It's not really a living thing. It's not really it's not like artificial intelligence or whatever, as far as thinking that we were somehow born here with a blank slate and a blank memory bank, and then as we accrue experiences and actions and events and thoughts and feelings, the memory bank records them. That's not what's really going on. That's the way it's supposed to look like, but the fact is, all of our memories, all of our thoughts, all of our feelings, all of our ideas, all the daydreams, the fantasies, everything, every action, every moment of behavior, it's already been packed. It was already thought out and packed before the Big Bang. So all of this is actually just unfolding and unfurling. But again, I wonder, if during those moments of what we call sleep, because think about it, eternal consciousness, simply, as much as it can fool itself and create a world like this where it does forget its eternalness, it is so magnificently intelligent that it is able to create a temporary world like this where it completely forgets its reality. Even though it can do that, I find it too hard to believe that eternal consciousness can actually somehow have no awareness of anything whatsoever. And so I think that when we fall asleep, we actually wake up in reality heaven for a little while. We have no memory of it because this is a human thing. The only memories that we can access in this human experience are human experiences. Reality heaven is not a human experience. It's a spiritual life. It's a spiritual reality, like I say, and it never changes. So sleep, isn't it interesting how you just sort of dissolve and disappear? You fall asleep. You fall away from this physical world. And I just wonder if we wake up in reality heaven for a little while. Because it's very restful in reality heaven. You see, that's why sleep is restful. And the best sleep is indeed the sleep where you're completely gone. You've disappeared for 3 or 4 hours or whatever with no dreams. It's very restful. Well, why is it restful? Well, because we're temporarily re-aware of reality heaven, which is absolutely fearless. And no concerns, no obligations, no responsibilities. That's indeed why we put on our tombstones, rest in peace. Doesn't say sleep in peace. It says rest in peace. Rest is when you, even as a human being, you calm down and you become very quiet. As far as I can tell, even though I know humans swear that they are able to stop thinking and so forth, as far as I can tell, our thoughts never stop thinking here in this human experience. No matter what kind of experience you have while meditating, you're still thinking. There's still thoughts going on there. There's still assessments and judgments going on. There's still an observer. There are still observations. But in reality heaven, it can be very, 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 very quiet. Very, very, very peaceful. It's very restful. So somehow this need for sleep amongst us physical creatures, I think that what's happening is we are falling out of consciousness from this human experience, reawakening in reality heaven for a little while. It's very restful there. We absolutely don't have to think about here and about all of our worries and disappointments and gripes and complaints. And then somehow we wake up back here. So Alan asked the question, what would it be like to go to sleep and never wake up? Well, as far as I can reckon and reason, death, no matter how you die here in this physical human world, is nothing but waking up in reality heaven. Your home state of awareness. And as I was saying earlier, obviously the majority of people here, even if they're on a so-called spiritual path, they very firmly, as spirits, design this physical human life to be a complete escape from reality heaven. They've designed it so that the idea of reality heaven and spiritual sanity and sobriety just sounds silly or sounds preposterous. But not as much as they have a problem with the idea that they, as spirits, before the Big Bang, thought out every moment of this existence, including and especially the bad, horrible, miserable, fucked up shit. That's the thing they can't get their head around. The argument that is thrown in my face numerous times is the idea that, number one, we would never get bored with heaven. Well, see, that person really hasn't thought out about, they really haven't thought about the subject very much. They haven't really defined what the hell heaven is, or heaven could be. Use your imagination and imagine the best heaven you can imagine. Whatever that is. Don't worry about being right or wrong or having to prove it or whatever. Just, do your best to imagine what would be the best heaven that you could imagine as anything. And I guarantee you, if you think about it beyond that, you will realize that, well, even the best of the best is, for eternity, forever and ever, is bound to become boring and dull after a while, no matter how best and great it is. I mean, it's like here as a human being. You oftentimes don't realize how good you've had it, health-wise, until you get ill. And you think, fuck, all that time and I wasn't ill and I didn't realize how good I had it. And so then when you recover from this illness, I don't know, you at least temporarily for a little while celebrate your good health again. Celebrate the fact that you recovered. Celebrate the fact that you're not ill anymore. And then of course that sort of fades away and you take it all for granted again. So they have a hard time believing that heaven would become boring. But that's just because you haven't thought about it long enough. And you haven't thought about what the fuck are you? You are consciousness, motherfucker. What is consciousness? You are a thinking, feeling entity who is aware of the fact that it thinks and feels. It's also aware of the fact that there are other thinker-feelers who are aware of the fact that they think and feel, and are aware of the fact that you exist. And all of these thinker-feelers, they are eternal consciousness. They have always been alive. Now, one of the things that's really difficult to imagine, and I think it's intentional, is it's hard to imagine what it's like to be alive as a thinking, feeling entity without a face, without eyes, nose, mouth, tongue, ears, brain, skin. It's, I think that's very telling, that it's virtually impossible to imagine what it's like to be alive as an eternal thinking, feeling entity who doesn't have a physical form. I would dare say doesn't even have an ethereal form. Doesn't have a spirit form either. It strikes me that the closest form that we might have would be somehow a ray of light, a gem of light, a sparkle of light, perhaps. So people have a very difficult time believing that heaven could get boring, and that we would therefore want an experience as crazy and weird and as almost as opposite as can be from our home state, from our reality heaven. But they also have just as difficult of a time believing that they could or would, as spiritual consciousness, as perfect eternal conscious energy, actually design all the bad shit that they have had to put up with so far in their lives. But I say, think of the alternative. I think it's much scarier and much worse to believe that someone or something else is responsible for the pain and the suffering and the misery in your life. I think it's far more liberating and good feeling to believe that you, as perfect eternal conscious energy, are so fucking magnificent. You're so fearless that, you're not afraid to put yourself through something as horrible of a life that you've had so far. And when you're young, let's say before you're the age of 50, I think you find it very difficult to publicly admit that this is a horrible fucking life and that this is a horrible fucking nightmare. And in fact, I think it's very difficult for many of you before you're 50 to even privately admit to yourself that, overall, this is a horrible fucking existence. And I really fucking regret that I fucking got myself into it. And I sure the fuck hope I don't ever, or for a long time anyways, put myself through another one of these fucking nightmares. Kurt Vonnegut said something very interesting in an interview that I listened to last night. It was an interview with some Australian dude, and it took place around 2005, about 2 years before Kurt died. And Kurt said, let me hit the pause button for a moment. Yeah, so Kurt was, he said something interesting. He said, what's so, basically he said that what's so horrible about this life is not that very many bad things have happened to him, but that he's had to witness the suffering of so many people in this world. That he's had to witness bad things happening to other people. That ruins your fun, man. He mentioned the fact that his sister, died a horrible death of cancer in her 40s. He mentioned the fact that his mom was so unhappy that she committed suicide on Mother's Day. The dude, Kurt Vonnegut, he got a break from World War II and was allowed to come home on vacation for a little bit. And on the day he's there visiting his mom, on Mother's Day, she fucking kills herself. And he saw his dad get very, very sad. Not necessarily because of the suicide, but because because of the Great Depression and so forth, the business got destroyed and so on and so forth. So anyways, but Kurt went to some country in Africa back in the 70s, I think it was, or maybe it was the early 80s. He wrote about it in one of his autobiographical works. I think it was Palm Sunday, but it might have been something else. Anyways, but he saw the starving black children with the swollen bellies and the flies all around their faces and so forth, and it really fucked him up to see, humanity allowing humanity to exist like that. But as I mentioned earlier, it has occurred to me now as an older man, and I've been a fan of Kurt's work since I was 13. It occurs to me that Kurt was very, very, very naive. He was a very, very, very naive man. And so I forgive him for his politics and his ideas about the fundamental questions of philosophy. He just didn't know. He didn't think very deeply about those things. And he didn't know that there was a deep state going on here. He just didn't realize. I mean, he knew there was some fucking shenanigans going on politically, but he had no idea just how bad things really have been for all these decades. But anyways, this has been a video speaking about sleep. And again, I would tell you or ask you to observe yourself as you're starting to fall asleep, and observe the fact that you basically just dissolve and disappear. So what's happening? Where are you going? How can eternal consciousness disappear and dissolve into nothingness to where it's no longer aware of itself or anything? I don't believe it can. That's why I think when we fall asleep, we as eternal consciousness are actually waking up in our home state of awareness, the same home state of awareness that we are going to wake up when we die. Because think about it, man. Eternal consciousness can create one of these dream worlds where it is thus unconscious of its true self. You know, its true self is perfect eternal conscious energy. But this, nonetheless, is not the same as dissolving and disappearing and being not aware of anything whatsoever. And so I think there's the illusion when we fall asleep that we have dissolved and disappeared into nothingness, that we are truly not aware of anything whatsoever. I think that's the illusion, but what's actually happening is we are temporarily waking up in our home state of awareness and resting. That's why sleep is restful. It's only recently occurred to me in the last year or so that there's this fallacy, there's this illusion that there's somehow two types of consciousness. I mean, there's eternal consciousness and then there's temporary consciousness. But what I'm trying to say is it's occurred to me that there really is no partitioning of consciousness. So in other words, the only thing that could create a temporary consciousness is an eternal consciousness. And that temporary consciousness, it can only be experienced by an eternal consciousness. Eternal consciousness cannot create eternal consciousness. Consciousness cannot create consciousness. Consciousness cannot beget consciousness. But it obviously can create a temporary experience, a temporary forgetting. So I used to be under the fallacy, under the illusion that there was me and the human consciousness and my soul or higher self who's not affected by this dream world. But I realized, like I said, eventually that consciousness cannot partition itself, and that the only thing that could be experiencing this temporary human consciousness is the same fucking eternal consciousness that created this experience before the Big Bang. So in one way, we as eternal consciousness having this human experience is similar to a human having an experience with LSD. The LSD doesn't change you as a human. It doesn't change your consciousness, but it gives you an experience of different thoughts and ideas and perceptions and feelings. But the only thing that could experience anything, anywhere, at any time, is eternal consciousness, because essentially, behind all illusions, there is only perfect eternal conscious energy. There are only eternal thinking, feeling entities who are aware of the fact that they are eternal thinking, feeling entities. So there is no soul, there is no higher self. But that's not to say, that's not to discourage anyone from believing there is. I found it very helpful to believe that I had a higher self or a soul that was helping me navigate. Now I've realized that's a load of shit. But nonetheless, and I like I said, it just what kept coming back to me as a sort of knot to untangle was this idea that consciousness, eternal consciousness, or any consciousness could partition itself, and it can't. I mean, I had long ago realized that consciousness cannot beget consciousness, that what is real and eternal cannot create anything real and eternal, because what is eternal has always existed. It doesn't have a creation date. It doesn't have a beginning point. It has always existed. The only thing that has always existed and that could only always exist would be eternal consciousness. Eternal thinking, feeling entities who were never born or created or invented or imagined. They just simply always existed as thinking, feeling entities. What are they to do with their ability to think and feel forever and ever? They obviously have an imagination. They obviously would like an escape from their home state of awareness, which never changes. It's very peaceful. It's completely fearless. There's no threats. There's no needs. There's no obligations. There's no responsibilities. So it's very nice. It's very easygoing. But after a while, that's sort of similar to being in a room with just one record that's playing the same songs over and over and over, forever and ever and ever. That just becomes dull. No matter how much you once enjoyed those fucking songs, the fact that you've heard them 10 trillion fucking times, they don't move you anymore. So you want to escape. You want something different. And so obviously, we've been able to figure out, as eternal consciousness, how to imagine a spiritual movie of sorts. A spiritual fucking roller coaster ride through a haunted house and happy village, and haunted house and happy village, and we've learned how to design and script an experience, a physical experience, where we forget temporarily our eternalness. And as I said earlier, we are magnificent and fearless, and so the idea of scripting ourselves a life that involves pain and misery and heartbreak and grief, it doesn't scare us as perfect spirits. It doesn't scare us any more than it scares. Some people on this planet, with trepidation, they might try a hit of LSD. There's other people, they'll take 10 fucking hits of this shit. They'll be so fucking spaced out that they sit in the same spot for 3 days. They can't move because their mind is completely fucking blown. They're not afraid. But that's what I'm saying. We as perfect eternal consciousness, we're not afraid to... Obviously, we're not afraid to have these horrible experiences. And as I was saying earlier, it might take until your fucking 50s until you have the nerve to admit that this really is a horrible fucking life. It's liberating to admit that it's a horrible life. What makes it all the more horrible is the fact that there's poignancy, that there's sweetness, that there's happiness, momentary kindness and friendliness and laughter and cuddles and temporary peace. And yet, plenty of bad things continue to happen. So people find it very hard to believe that they would get bored with heaven, and they find it very hard to believe that they're the ones who scripted all the bad stuff they've experienced so far. And I say it's very telling that they find it difficult to believe. In fact, I therefore draw the conclusion that it's perfect that they find it hard to believe. I draw the conclusion that, the majority of people here wanted to forget reality heaven completely and just be immersed and absorbed in this spiritual movie. They wanted to be befuddled. They wanted to be confused. They wanted to experience grief and misery and suffering. And here they are. Saying that it's a horrible life doesn't take away from the nice moments. Like I say, it's just, if anything, the nice moments make the bad moments stink even worse. I mean, if this was just nothing but a fucking, bad news moment after moment, bad feelings and bad thoughts moment after moment, I think we'd get used to it. It's so the brilliant, super intelligent fact of the matter that we have this thing called contrast. How brilliant. Alan Watts was originally going to title his autobiography The Coincidence of Opposites. But apparently the publisher thought that was too highbrow. The Coincidence of Opposites, which is the same as saying contrast. The sweet, the lovely things here wouldn't be as lovely and sweet if we didn't have their opposites. After a while, you get used to the smell of shit. Like if you live with cats and you've got a litter box in the house, we don't anymore. But if you've got a litter box in the house and the cat takes a shit, and your cat happens to eat processed food, the whole house smells of shit. And but the thing is after a couple of minutes, you hardly notice it. You get used to it. We have a cat flap that goes outdoors, and up against that cat flap from the outdoor side is a little dog kennel, and we've got the litter box in there, and so the cats can go through the cat flap into the outdoor potty, so to speak. Now sometimes, I won't mention any names, but some people can take a very, very stinky shit even in that outdoor potty, and it wafts through the house. And so I have to quickly go out there and scoop it up and get rid of it. But again, I'm talking about contrast. And so things like vanilla and various flowers, they smell so nice because you have had the experience of stinky things. And so it's the same with the bad moments. Have you noticed that there really is no true happiness? This idea that there's going to be some kind of permanent happiness, that somehow you're going to achieve something one way or another, and from then on it's going to be a happy dream. Like I say, even if you were able to manage that, which you aren't and you won't, but even if you were able to manage that, how happy could you be when there's still loads of other people suffering? It's like, I can't go on holiday anymore if I put my cats in a cattery. I can't enjoy myself. Well, I know the cats are at the cattery wondering where the hell am I? Wondering if I'm ever coming back, wondering if they're ever going home. I can't truly enjoy myself on holiday. I can appreciate the pretty sights, but underneath it all, I'm concerned about my companions. I don't like calling them pets. Pets is demeaning. They're my companions. And you'll note that the word companion is definitely a step above friend. So, sleep. Yeah. Observe it. You dissolve and disappear. What's really happening? I think that we're actually waking up in reality heaven for a little while. And the reason why we have no memory of it is because the human isn't experiencing it. It's us, the eternal consciousness, that's experiencing that. Therefore, the human memory doesn't record it. And like I said, I don't think memory records the way we think it does anyways. I don't think it records. I think memory unfolds and unfurls. This is a movie that we've already scripted, that we've already played out, so to speak. And now we're just, instead of like a human who watches a movie that they've made and starred in, we have the infinitely intelligent experience of experiencing the actual movie that we created in collusion and collaboration with everyone else before the Big Bang. The Big Bang was the beginning of the movie. That's all. The beginning of the movie that had already been scripted. Right, well, so this has been a subject about sleep. Has this been a subject about sleep? This has been a video about sleep. And I have been your host, Alexander T. Newport, your philobabblist extraordinaire. It has been the 19th of November, 2019. I don't think there's anything else to say about sleep. I mean, I certainly won't talk about the benefits because I've done that in other videos and books and so forth. I will just, briefly say that I think sleep's the greatest fucking thing. I love sleeping. I love it, love it, love it, love it. And I'll do anything to fucking achieve it if I have difficulty about it. The only time I have difficulty sleeping is when I don't have marijuana to smoke in the evening. And that happens sometimes. But then I find other things that will assist me a good night's sleep. I never have trouble falling asleep. It's just that when I don't have any marijuana to smoke in the evening, when I do fall asleep, if I wake up, I have a difficult time going back to sleep. But as I say, there are alternatives. There are other options that can help you get a good night's sleep. And so I employ those. Right. Is there anything else to say about sleep? I don't think there is. I mean, if you had to explain it to somebody, you would say that you basically dissolve and disappear and appear to be completely non-existent for a little while. You have no awareness of anything whatsoever. That's like pure nothingness. That's like pure non-existence. And I say that eternal consciousness cannot experience that. And that, in fact, what is happening is we, as the eternal consciousness that is experiencing this temporary role, this temporary life, we, as eternal consciousness, are actually temporarily waking up in our home state of awareness when the human is asleep. Now, what's happening with dreams? I think dreams, again, are just as the same with the memory bank. It's already been pre-programmed. They just simply unfold and unfurl. And obviously dreams are occurring sort of, well, obviously we're back here. We're obviously no longer aware of reality heaven when we're having an awareness of dreams in our sleep here. So those are sort of two different states, aren't they? The dream state and the sleep state. Because the sleep state, you're completely gone, you've disappeared, you're not aware of anything whatsoever. It's like you don't exist at all. Whereas the dream state, you're aware within a world that is similar to the one that you're awake as asleep, but it's not the same as the one you're aware of when you're a human being who's no longer asleep. Because the dreams in our so-called sleep zone, that dream world changes every moment. Nothing is stable within that dream world. Don Juan Matus would tell Carlos Castaneda that when he was dreaming in his sleep to look at his hands. But if either of them had been completely honest, they would have admitted that, if you look at your hand in the sleep dream, for more than a second or so, it's going to morph into something else. Because everything just completely morphs and changes within the sleep dream. There's no stability within it whatsoever. That's why lucid dreaming is a load of shit. There's no lucid dreaming happening. All that can ever actually happen is that you're having a sleep dream where you think within the dream that you are being lucid, but actually you're not aware of the fact that you're actually in bed asleep having a dream. It's only when you wake up that you realize, wow, I just had a dream about telling people that life was just a dream. I just had a dream where I thought I was having a lucid dream, but actually I was just dreaming. Because during that so-called lucid dream, I had no idea that I was actually home in bed asleep. Yeah, well, there we go. As I said, I've been your host, Alexander T. Newport, your philobabblist extraordinaire. It would be really groovy if you hit the subscribe button and hit the like button and share this video or put it on a playlist. That would be awesome. We are mostly posting these videos at BitChute, but sometimes we post them at YouTube because when we do so, it sometimes automatically then uploads it to BitChute. But I have to say, lately that hasn't been happening, so I don't know what the fuck's going on. BitChute is a bit, unstable at times. Sometimes I'll go to click on a video I've uploaded and that plays perfectly well, all of a sudden won't work. But nonetheless, I get a hell of a lot more hits at BitChute than I do at YouTube. At YouTube I have 119 subscribers. I hardly get any views on any of my videos. At BitChute I have 15 subscribers and I get over 100 fucking hits on my videos, so I don't know what the fuck's going on. Excuse me. Right. Be cool, fool.